Okay, I've just had a second Z-Man toy come in for repair, and this one you can see is a different color combination. My other one was basically black with red, and this one's black with yellow. And this one I was able to 3D print some of the missiles to go on there. So perhaps it will fire the missiles, we'll see. Oh, there went one missile. There went the other missile. Now it should change to looping in the other direction. And now it's probably going to run into something, huh? No? Cool. Okay, I'm going to go grab them and we're going to talk a little bit more about old Z-Man. Got him. Let me get a missile. And let's go into the other room where the light's a little bit better. Like here. Here. Okay. Mostly in screen, I think. So basically I had to 3D print some little missiles and just use the only springs I had. They're a little bit stiff, but they do work. And on this Z-Man, besides being more complete, my red one had a broken front hood ornament and these missile launchers were broken off. But this one even has the metal back plate that goes over the rear wheels. But I have it off on purpose right now because I wanted to point out one of the main things that this Z-Man didn't have was this gear was missing. This is when the rear wheels turn, they turn this worm gear, and this worm gear then turns this large gear. This large gear has a shaft that goes all the way up into Z-Man's brain, which you can see me talk all about that in the very first video I did, and I'll put a link to that down below, of how it's a mechanical sequencer, but it has electrical switches, and the electrical switches control the two motors, which then, of course, depending on which one's running, it's going to turn left or turn right when it moves. I got all kinds of nice dog hair in there just from running in the kitchen for a few seconds. Also, this one still had enough of these plastic parts left here that I was able to bend a wire frame that's like the one that originally came with this toy back in 1956 to hold the batteries in. It is busted off on this side over here, but it can still catch on that side, so the batteries stay in. Still had the front plate too, which is nice. Of course, I had to replace the light bulbs. At least it had the battery box parts, so I was able to glue those back in place. And another thing that had that made it all possible, because that one gear that had to be replaced, I was going, well, where am I going to get one of those gears? Well, it came with an extra motor unit from some other junked one, I guess. And normally the wheels would be out here on the ends of these two axles. Didn't get the wheels, that's fine. But this large gear right here, that's the same gear that was needed to fix the sequencer drive. So took the gear off this side over here and mounted it inside there to get everything going again. So it was really cool to get one of these. And also an interesting bit of information is, even though this thing was made in America, if you can look on that motor, or maybe on this one, you'll see that the motor that they used was made in Japan. I'm just assuming it was a lot less expensive to, even in 1956, to import the battery motor from Japan than it would be to custom build your own little battery motor, like some of the other companies were doing in America. But their motors were bigger. These were smaller, so maybe that was another reason too, is the Japanese ones were smaller than the American made ones. Also over here you can see this is the little spring clutch, which you've seen me cover now in a couple of videos. This little spring fits tight on this axle, which is normally driven by this gear. The spring is still on that side, right there. This one I had to remove the spring. And what it does is, when the axle turned, this end of the spring would connect to the rubber wheel. The other end doesn't connect to anything. But when the axle turns in one direction, it tends to expand the spring so it slips, so the wheel doesn't drive. And when it turns in the opposite direction, it tends to collapse the spring, which then bites on the shaft even tighter and makes the wheel to drive. It's sort of like those old Chinese finger puzzle things where you put your finger in both ends and you try to pull your fingers out and you can't. It gets tighter and it gets tighter. Well, that would be a push-pull one-way clutch. This is a rotational one-way clutch, but it's the same type of thing. That's how it's going to bite in and get tighter when it turns one way versus the other. I did a video on how that works, and I'll link that down below too. Another interesting thing that this one came with was a photocopy of the complete original handbook. At least I think it's complete. And it's interesting, well, one, because this particular one was sold by Sears and Roebuck, which is what I remembered, and also it's dated 1956, so you have all that. Then you have a page that talks about your operating instructions and what it is, and cautions and gameplay and strategy and stuff like that. And then it talks about the firing of the missiles, how to load them, how to preset the push buttons up inside his brain and what not to touch. Then here they give you some examples of how you can preset the brain to do specific movements. And that gets us back to the beginning. So, very interesting, very nice to see one as a more complete example. And like I say, the missiles just push straight in, and then you rotate to lock them on like that. And when this finger comes around, it's going to push on the back side of the missile, rotate it a little bit, and then it's going to let loose and fly. I think that's about all I wanted to say.